Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. So I rise to speak tonight on the TEQSA charges and cost recovery bills. So these bills give effect to the government's decision to implement increased cost recovery for TEQSA, announced in the 2018-19 budget. They're not new, they're not a surprise, and have actually been paused 3 times due to the COVID pandemic and its impact on the sector. What these bills give effect to is the government's decision to implement cost recovery arrangements for TEQSA. So what does this involve? Because listening to this debate throughout today, I'm not quite sure those opposite actually understand that. So what we'll be doing is increasing TEQSA's application-based fees to recover the true cost of these activities. But in respect to some of the providers with smaller student loads, these fees will be discounted, ensuring that we reduce the financial barriers to course innovation. There'll also be the implementation of per-hour charges for compliance assessments. Now, these will be waived if no compliance action is taken. There'll be a new annual charge to recover the cost of TEQSA's risk monitoring and regulatory oversight activities, which are not covered by application-based or compliance fees. So the new annual charge is the subject of these bills. So prior to the COVID-19 fee waiver, which is actually in place until the 31st of December this year, TEQSA's cost recovery was incredibly low. In fact, it was around 15% of total costs. So with these changes, TEQSA's level of cost recovery will increase to around 90% of regulatory costs and 75% of total costs. A small number of non-regulatory activities will continue to be fully funded by the government, which equates to being fully funded by the taxpayer, including those who didn't get the benefit of attending university. And these include actions to deter third-party cheating services and also promote integrity in the face of external threats, including cybersecurity and foreign interference. The cost of these activities, around $3.9 million per year, will not be recovered from higher education providers. So as I said, the government has delayed the increase of cost recovery for TEQSA on several occasions due to external factors, including the COVID-19 pandemic. And these delays have been occurring, though, at a time when the Morrison government is in fact providing record funding to Australian universities, $20.4 billion in 2021, an increase of 17%, up from $17.3 billion in 2019. This includes an additional $1 billion boost to support university research, which is flowing to the universities this year. And under our Job Ready graduate package, more Australians are studying at our universities than ever before, over 800,000 students this year. It's an increase of 5% of total students since 2020, but commencements of new students are actually up by 7%. But what's really important here to note is that more Australians are studying the courses that are actually likely to get them a job. Outrageous, I know, that we might want to focus on university degrees that actually ensure that graduates are employable and are educated in fields that the market is actually in search of. So when we look at some of those areas, what are the levels of commencements that are up? So we're looking at 14% in science, 13% in IT, 10% in engineering, 14% in agriculture, 11% in education and 8% in health, all significant increases in new commencements in areas where the jobs of the future will be. And science in particular is particularly well funded under the JRG package. Funding's up by 8%, more than the average cost of delivering a science degree and 10% more than the cost of an engineering degree. And these are some of the most profitable fields under the new arrangements. So on average, base funding across all fields is 5.6% more than the average cost of teaching a bachelor degree. So claims that the job-ready package is discouraging enrolments in science and engineering are in fact not correct. What a surprise. As per usual from the opposite side, they haven't quite got those facts correct. And the enrolments show, as I said, that nationally enrolments in science are up and enrolments in engineering are up. And thanks to our record, investment and reforms, Australian universities are actually in a better financial position than anyone expected. There are a number of indications that 2020 outcomes were better than anticipated 12 months ago. So I'll just put this in actual figures for those opposite. For 2020, a number of universities are reporting surpluses. These include $259 million for Monash University, University of Melbourne $178 million, University of Queensland $83 million, University of WA $58 million, University of Adelaide $41 million, Flinders University $35 million, Edith Cowan University $24 million, University of Southern Queensland $13 million, and Western Sydney University $13 million. All are reporting surpluses despite claims to the contrary from those opposite and what was originally being proclaimed by the sector. And we've heard during the debate today those opposite raise cuts to higher education, and as we know, that is simply untrue. They just make it up. Our boost to research funding, which accounts for the decrease in higher education funding as shown in budget paper number 1, this was not a bring forward, it was a new one-off stimulation. And the figures in the budget papers exclude the higher education loan program outlays, including help outlays shows the government overall funding to universities in 2021 is $20.4 billion. As I said, a significant increase, and in fact, it's an increase of 37% since 2013. So at present, TEQSA's cost recovery levels are currently very low at around 15%. The taxpayer currently bears the burden of funding the vast majority of TEQSA's regulatory activities. The taxpayer. So this includes university graduates, but more importantly, the taxpayers include those that never had the benefit of attending a university. So increased cost recovery for TEQSA will involve increasing application-based fees to recover the true cost of these activities. And the increase to these application-based fees will be enabled by new fees determination to be issued by TEQSA. We're looking to introduce a new annual charge on higher education providers to recover the costs of TEQSA's risk monitoring and regulatory oversights. And the new annual charge is the subject of these bills. TEQSA will continue to seek stakeholder feedback on a draft cost recovery implementation statement consistent with the Australian Government cost recovery guidelines. And whilst higher education providers are likely to criticise the new annual charge, it's actually going to be phased in over 3 years to moderate any financial impact. And the charge will be calculated each year for each provider. And the amount charged will change each year and depend on a number of factors, including TEQSA's estimated costs for the year in question, the number of registered providers, but also the number of enrolled students each provider actually has. So if the proposal outlined in TEQSA's consultation were to be implemented unamended, it's estimated that the vast majority of providers, around 80%, will pay an annual charge of between $25,000 and $35,000 a year once fully phased in, so from 2024 onwards. The annual charge will be phased in, as I said, over 3 years, commencing on the 1st of January 2022. So from the 1st of January next year, they'll be looking to recover 20% of the costs. This will rise to 50% in 2023 and 100% from the 1st of January 2024. Having gone through those estimated surpluses of a number of those universities, it's important to know that it's only a small number of very large universities could see an annual charge of up to around $45,000 a year. So the total funds expected to be recovered through the annual charge currently estimated around $5.7 million a year once fully phased in. So, just so we're clear, with regards to the charges bill, this will enable a new annual charge to be collected from registered higher education providers to recover the costs of TEQSA's risk monitoring, compliance monitoring investigations, complaint management, stakeholder engagement, and other regulatory oversight activities. These costs, again, are currently not being recovered and are borne by the taxpayer. The annual charge will be phased in over 3 years. As I just said, 2022 will see 20%, 2023 will see 50%, 2024 will reach the 100% mark. This will be phased in to ensure that the final financial impact is moderated. And the amount of the annual charge will be prescribed by regulations setting out the formula for the charge, and this will be made through the Governor-General through the Executive Council. The second bill, the Cost Recovery Bill, will enable TEQSA to levy the annual charge created by the Charges Bill. The amendments will require a higher education provider to pay the annual charge as and when it falls due, including any penalties for late payment, and failure by an education provider to pay the charge will constitute a breach of its conditions of registration. I commend the bills to the Senate.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Senator McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President.